Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill. This is where we take your shared sources, articles, research notes, all that stuff, and we try to distill it. Find the really important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Think of it as your shortcut to being truly well informed, with surprising facts and just enough humor to keep you hooked, hopefully. So today, we're diving into some pretty fascinating material you shared. Specifically, it's an audio excerpt titled WikiLeaks Official Tweet Pizzagate Singled Out Finally.mp3. Now, the source presents a very specific interpretation of a significant online event, and our mission really is to extract the core claims, understand the arguments being made, and sort of map out the narrative the speaker constructs here.
Yeah, what's really interesting is how the speaker interprets one particular WikiLeaks tweet and how they connect that interpretation to, well, a much broader narrative, one that seems quite personal to them. So our deep dive today is going to focus on dissecting exactly what the source claims about that specific tweet, the allegations it touches on, and the frankly significant implications the source draws from it all, especially for society.
Okay, so the source kicks things off with a really strong assertion. Basically, that a WikiLeaks tweet mentioning Pizzagate by name is, and this is their phrase, incontrovertible proof.
Right, incontrovertible proof that WikiLeaks considers the allegations about John Podesta, specifically the alleged involvement in pedophilia, as being, quote, newsworthy and central to their leaks.
Okay, and just for context for everyone listening, John Podesta was the campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And Pizzagate itself, well, it's a widely discussed and largely discredited conspiracy theory. It gained traction around that election, suggesting a fabricated child sex trafficking ring linked to a pizza restaurant.
Exactly. And it's important to see how the source tries to sort of bolster this main claim about the tweet. They specify that this WikiLeaks tweet links to a segment from CBS Reality Check, hosted by Ben Swann.
Oh, okay.
And the speaker in our source material says that Ben Swann certainly doesn't seem to think that Pizzagate is fake. They also express, quite high regard for Swann, saying they followed him for years, even interviewed him before. So linking to a journalist they respect is part of framing their argument.
Right, using that connection to add weight. So building on that perceived validation from the tweet and the journalist, our source then makes a pretty controversial jump, doesn't it?
It does.
Directly claiming that John Podesta, when using words like pizza, hot dog stand, he's actually talking about something in code. The speaker is emphatic, not referring to physical food items there. So how do they build on this idea, this coded communication theory?
Well, this idea of code words is really critical. It's kind of the linchpin.
Yeah.
Because from there, the source starts weaving this larger narrative focused on personal vindication.
Vindication? How so?
The speaker literally claims they are 3 for 3 in their major predictions or insights. They talk about being right about NSA programs, mentioning them, more than a year before Edward Snowden's slides came out.
Okay.
And also getting details right about the drone program, details later corroborated, they say, by an NYU Stanford study.
I see. So past wins lending credibility to the current claim.
Exactly. And now the third one, according to the source, is that Pizzagate is in fact real. It's
Right.
rhetorical strategy, right? Using past perceived successes to argue for the validity of a current, more controversial claim, challenging that mainstream view.
Okay, so if the source feels proven right on these big issues and they're extending that to Pizzagate, what do they think the implications are? What does this mean for society in their eyes?
Well, they frame this perceived vindication as a good sign. A good sign because for them it means society can move forward.
Move forward how?
By enabling public discussion, investigation, and ultimately prosecution of these sickos, as they put it.
Right, so opening the door to accountability based on this supposed proof.
And connecting it to a bigger picture, the source talks about how this information is allegedly spreading. They mention an email from a viewer claiming this is spreading like wildfire in Australia.
Wow. Oh.
With the email apparently saying that some of their politicians are already talking publicly about some kind of pedo epidemic in elite circles.
So they're painting a picture of this idea gaining international traction among officials.
That's the claim presented in the source, yes. It really emphasizes the perceived impact they believe these revelations are having.
And what's really striking, too, is how personally the speaker takes the criticism they received earlier.
Oh, absolutely.
They say, a minority of you owe me an apology for being treated like garbage and compared to a UFO chaser or a conspiracy theorist.
Very direct.
And they push back hard, stating, I'm not a UFO chaser. I'm not an editor at the National Enquirer. I'm not interested in outrageous headlines. Then they add, Pizzagate sounded outrageous, but it was actually true, and I did my homework. That's a really strong defense of their own credibility.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the conviction they hold.
Hmm.
How deeply invested they seem to be in validating these views they've held. And this conviction then leads into a pretty interesting prediction about the quote-unquote elites.
Oh, what kind of prediction?
The source foresees a lot of people pulling out of the central banking system.
Pulling out of the banks. Why?
Well, they're careful to state it's a personal view and not financial advice, but the logic presented is, if this is how corrupt our politicians are, and the central banks are basically political entities, they might be caught up in this crap too.
I see. So a loss of faith in the entire system, potentially.
That seems to be the suggestion, that this kind of disillusionment could drive people towards alternatives, like moving assets into gold and Bitcoin.
Fascinating how the implications stretch from interpreting emails to potential financial system shifts.
It really shows the scope of the narrative being built from that initial interpretation of the WikiLeaks tweet.
And just to wrap up their argument, how do they conclude?
They conclude very definitively. The source says they got their grade back from WikiLeaks, from Professor Assange.
Professor Assange, wow.
Yeah, claiming they were 100% right,
Hmm.
and then they thank the majority who were not critical, but were instead extremely open-minded and extremely intelligent. It frames the whole thing as a completed validation.
Okay, so let's recap the core claims we've unpacked from this really compelling source. There's the interpretation of that WikiLeaks tweet as the definitive proof for Pizzagate.
Mm-hmm.
Then the idea of John Podesta using code words pizza, hot dog.
Right, the coded language argument.
Then the speaker's own narrative of personal vindication being proven right on the NSA, drones, and now this.
That 3 for 3 idea.
And finally, the prediction of these major societal shifts, maybe even impacting the financial system.
Yeah, what's really compelling, I think, is seeing how information gets presented when someone feels their long-held beliefs are suddenly confirmed, especially by an entity they see as significant, like WikiLeaks in this case. The source puts forward this very strong belief in their findings, this idea that what was dismissed before is now validated.
Yeah.
And they see it as, well, a path forward for society.
So for you, listening to this deep dive, it's really a window into how one individual interprets information, especially when they feel their own views, maybe views held for a long time, are being confirmed. We've seen how the source connects specific details, like a tweet or certain words, to these much broader narratives of personal vindication and even societal change. So as you encounter information presented like this out in the world, it's worth considering, how are these narratives constructed? How is personal credibility established by the speaker? And how are specific claims linked to those wider, sometimes quite dramatic implications?
Definitely food for thought.